Hi everybody, this is part 2 of a 3-part series on how to make a pumpkin pie. Part 1, we'll put a link up there, was how to do the crust, and this was how to do the filling and the decorations on the pie. Thanks for watching. See you next time. I have my ingredients ready. First thing I need to do is take 4 eggs, which I've already cracked and made sure they were good and all that sort of thing. Put them in the mixer. And then I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. And a heaping teaspoon of ginger. I have to fake my heap a little bit because it doesn't want to fill completely. There we go. Should be good. If I get an extra grain of ginger in there, it's not going to destroy anything. Now it's going to get noisy. Scraping that down to make sure I'm not leaving a lot on the edges anywhere. Although this new beater that I bought a couple of years ago is really good about getting the goop off the edges. Now we mixed in the pumpkin. And this is not pumpkin pie mix, this is just plain 100% pure pumpkin. Pumpkin pie mix has already got the recipe, has already got the spices in it usually. This is why the counter's always clean. That would be perfect for the dog. Pumpkin is actually very good for dogs and cats. He hasn't had any since probably last Christmas. I don't think that was the last time we gave him a try, so let's see if he remembers it. Okay, turn that off for a minute. Scrape this down. Make sure everything is in there. No magically hiding bits of ricotta or anything else. Okay. We only have one more thing to mix in, and that's the sugar. Now, we do not eat a lot of super sweet stuff around here, but this is as sweet as we like it. It has a cup and a half of sugar in it, which I know is some people like put on their breakfast cereal. Okay, that should be it. I'll check one more time to make sure. I see a couple of gloopy spots here. I've always hated when I bite into something and it's got a concentration of sugar or salt or something else it shouldn't have. So I try and make sure, without overbeating things, that everything's mixed together properly. To do is split this about half and half. Good enough. Okay, now what I'm doing is settling in the pie so that it's pretty flat. Because no matter how hard I whack this thing with a spatula, it's not really going to be completely level. Because now I'm going to do something cool. Now obviously this is a pumpkin pie, so we don't put a top crust on this. However, we can put decorations on it. If you'll think about some of those fancy pies that you've seen in some of the high-end bakeries, they're not usually doing anything too elaborate, but it seems so special the way they look a lot of times. Well, this will do it for you. I have little cutters that my mother-in-law gave me years ago, and they're a pastry cutter that has a spring in there. So what I can do is choose whatever decorations I want to make. Now I've got a really cool leaf. Push down just a little, and I push down a lot to make it come out.
What shapes are you making now?
This is an acorn. So I've got oak leaves and acorns on this. And I did it a bit at a time because I'm not sure if I've got enough dough. I think I will though. Now what I have to do is I have to actually push down like that, and that actually prints the design that's on the inside of this little thing. I've also been able to find some, these were fancy ones that came from one of the high-end cooking stores. But I found some similar ones that are made by like Wilton and stuff like that that can be used for cutting. Well, they're probably meant to be cutting some sort of other thing other than dough, but they work perfectly fine. And these little bits on top just make it look so cool. And you can get as fancy or as, you know, I try not to get too crazy with it. But it just looks sort of elegant when it's done. And yeah, each one is not 100% perfect, etc., etc. But if you looked at the fancy cakes up close, you'd find out they're not particularly perfect either. And people just think they're cool, so they don't bother noticing the mistakes in them. And I can go ahead and mush this together again, because we haven't overworked it yet, so we still have a little bit more workability left in it. And it'll be just fine for what it's going to be, which is just a little bit of decoration. I can get as crazy as I want, put as much stuff on as I want. Fell out before I got to put that design on it. Always good to have a little paring knife around for picking up if you can't grab it with your fingers. We'll do a beauty shot when I'm done. Extra designs. Didn't get my spacing quite right on this one. I think I'll leave it be. Anyway, I think it looks cool. And we'll just bake that the same way as we always do. The oven's ready, so I can get brave and stick them in there. The advantages to a nice big oven is that I can put them in next to one another. If I need to, I can spin them around. This silly thing's going to slide around because it's going to. There we go, going in the oven. These need to cook, for an hour to an hour and 10 minutes. They're usually done about an hour, but we'll always have to check that, of course. What makes these work so well is that they have a little spring in the back, and when I put it down, you're just cutting it like you would with a cookie cutter, but then that spring lets you print onto the cookie part of it, I mean the crust part of it, but then when you dump it out, it lets you dump it out. It doesn't get stuck the way some cookie cutters, sometimes it'll get stuck, and then you've got that piece there that you can eat. Smush.
How did you learn to make this dough? The crust?
This was actually my mom's recipe. Or pretty close to it, I think. And I sized it up for 2 pumpkin pies because she never made more than 1 pie at a time. The only thing I had to change was the amount of water because it is drier here. And as you saw, I put probably 2 more tablespoons in today than usual. It has been a really dry year, so even though we keep our flour in pretty airtight containers, I used to keep it in a canister, but I had too many troubles with it. But even with an airtight container, because these are food-safe commercial containers, it's still dry because it sits on a shelf at the grocery store for a while and things like that. So, yeah. And my mom was really good with pie crusts. She could always make a nice flaky pie crust. So, she probably taught me to make pie crust when I was 5 or 6. Just something you watched everybody in the kitchen do. It's not hard. I did use some of the commercial ones for a while. Sometimes when the kids were little and I was just crazy busy. But I have some food sensitivities, and a lot of the companies switched from butter and other stuff like that over to canola oil, which I'm allergic to. So it became harder and harder to find crusts that were good that wouldn't make me sick. And the purpose of eating a pie is to have a good time, not to get sick from it. So I went back to making pie crusts again. I'm not as usually in as crazy a busy. I'm not working a day job plus, you know, doing all these other things. I work here, which is probably more than a day job, but but I have more flexible schedule. I don't have a boss who's sitting there saying, you have to be at work at 8. Unless it's me saying, I have to be at work at 8.